All right, good morning everyone and welcome back to the KSR YouTube channel. We have taken it back apart again, but it's all for a good reason. We're getting ready to powder coat all of the stuff that was not powder coated when we first assembled this thing. We still have one more thing to do, which is going to be to add some inner fenders to cover off that area, because this thing is a street car designed for drag week, sick week, Rocky Mountain Race Week, all those fun drag and drive events. So on top of that, Travis just finished up the pipes that go from the filter boxes down into the inlets of the turbochargers. Yeah, as you might imagine, those took a little while to fabricate. But making some progress on this thing, and we're prettying it up now. Prettying it? Is that a word? Making it pretty, that's what we're doing. Yep. So one last time this thing's coming apart, and then we're actually going to take it back to the track, put Sean in it. Like I said in my previous video about the car running it at the drag strip, we're going to send the torque converter out, have some adjustments made to it. And while we've got the engine out, we might as well retorque the cylinder heads, get this thing ready to go racing. So stay tuned, let's see what all we can knock out. So check out this completely custom fabricated aluminum core support we've been working on. Still have to come back in and weld the last little bits of it. That's why it's over here on the bench. This is the part that fits around the headlights, or behind the headlights. Yeah, headlights go here. This is where our filter goes in this box right here. And then comes off on a tube down from there. Is this the right side? Yeah. So, and then that hooks up to there, goes down to the inlet of the turbo. I'm just about to jump on welding all of this, and I'm going to try and set it up where I've got the clock in the background. And you guys can see just how long it takes to weld up something like that. It's already fit together all pretty well. All I got to do is get to work welding up all those joints. It's going to take a little while. And then we'll finish up welding on this thing, bolt it back in, and then we've got to make a patch here for the expansion tank. Sits right in this spot, so we're going to seal that off with some kind of piece that fits in there, weld it in, and then this will also be going out to powder coat. We've got some stuff to talk with Sean about how we're going to do some colors on some different things. Probably going to be black, but we'll figure out what he wants to do when we talk to him on the phone. All right, let's get to work welding this thing. All right, everybody, well, the talking time lapse returns. While we're here, just want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to the channel, or we would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button, hit the bell icon, and yeah, that helps us grow the channel and lets us do more of these videos. So we've got the HTP welder fired up. So we're working on the tube to connect the air box down to the turbo. Whole lot of pie cuts, and I think I've said before on the channel, I'm not a huge fan of pie cuts, like not a big fan of the look really, but you know, sometimes when you gotta use them, you gotta use them, and this was certainly one of those instances. And for a little bit of my process, I make sure that before I start really piling the weld on a setup like this, like you see me doing now, I tack weld each joint in 4 places. So basically every 90 degrees, so that the joint cannot move. Because if you think about it, you know, we've got 11 joints here. If any one part pulls towards the other one, well, it's going to have a huge effect on the alignment by the time you get to each end of the tube itself. So you want to make sure that you lock down the tubing before you start really piling the weld to it. And also another thing I'm doing is I'm skipping every other joint. Like you can kind of see I've got a gap between each of the welds. So the thing I've noticed is it changes the appearance of the welds, especially where they're really tight together on the inside edge of the pie cut. And just a little trick I picked up through the years that, you know, I feel like it makes the welds prettier and kind of reconfirmed it here doing this project, because honestly it's been quite a while since I've welded a bunch of aluminum pie cuts together. But they worked out good in this. And Travis went to town on getting all the fitment of these, and I'll show you when we get the car back together. It's a 1/4 of an inch from the inner fender on one side, and then when the tire swings in to turn at full lock, the tire just barely kisses the inside edge, and there really wasn't much else way to do it. Just a whole lot of stuff crammed into this car in a tight area, and we had to do what we had to do to make it all fit. So another reminder for you guys that are welding yourself, if you need any welding supplies or welders or anything, go to usaweld.com and use the discount code WINWITHKSR, and you will get a 5% discount on your order. So that's about it for this time lapse, and back to the live action. All right, so it looks like, I don't know, well, what was that, like 45 minutes or so? So the welding's the quick part, if you guys are wondering. It's all that fit up of, I don't know how many pieces that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So the fit up of all those 11 pieces, 12 if you count the V-band. That plus building the scoop boxes into the back of this, that's where all the real time is involved. And now I've got to jump over onto this and get it welded up. So definitely knocking things out on this thing. Still really excited for how it performed at the track. And one thing I didn't mention in the track video, because I forgot to even check it until we got back here, is the belt stayed on. Didn't jump a groove. Like the first couple of times we ran this thing, it would skip a groove on the AC compressor, and it just started eating the belt up, and then it would chew a rib off the belt, and it just wouldn't hold a belt. Whether that's, we ended up playing with the alignment on the tensioner, actually kind of put washers under one side of it that shouldn't have made it square, but it seems like it did make it square when we put a laser on it. And you know, it took a little bit of work to get that happy, but it seems happy now, which makes me happy. And we did put a bigger alternator pulley on it after the time Sean drove it and looked at the RPM and then did some math on the speed there. Kind of felt like we stood a risk of overspeeding the alternator and killing it, which we don't want to do, or don't, if we can avoid that for a customer, obviously we're going to try and do that. And then that's pretty much it. So this thing's really starting to get wrapped up, and CJ's over there taking apart that 5th gen Camaro, and the 4th gen Camaro is back on the dyno, kind of waiting for me. I still have to do an alignment on it and dyno tune it, so that'll be coming up soon. But I'm gonna get over to welding on the core support, see what you guys think of all the process for doing that. So another talking time lapse we're gonna do here. And yeah, we're just going to town welding this core support. One thing you might see me do quite a bit here is I kind of make a dry run on the weld. Oop, I guess I had a gap to tighten up there. Got the hammer out in the punch. So anyways, so what I mean by a dry run is I make sure that I'm comfortable, but also make sure that I can pull the welding torch and apply the filler rod without getting in an uncomfortable position. Because at least for me, out of position welding is some of the hardest welding that we have to do, or that I have to do. And if I can make sure that I stay in a usable body position, the welds just end up prettier. If I get in a weird spot and I have to hold the filler rod out, well, the odds of me smacking the filler rod against the tungsten and ruining a piece of tungsten, which I think happens a couple times in this video, the odds go up by a bunch just because I'm not comfortable, and it's just how it ends up. And another thing you may see me doing is I have the filler rod way stuck out and I kind of feed with my arm rather than work the filler rod through my fingers. There's a bunch of people that are really good at feeding the the filler rod through their hand while they're welding. And sometimes I can get it right. Other times it's a struggle for me and I end up waving the filler rod around. So I just kind of stick with what works for me. Kind of encourage you guys to do the same. You know, don't get caught up doing something just because somebody else does it. Do what works best for you and gives you the best results, so that, you know, you can get better kind of in your own way. I mean, obviously be open to how other people do things. That's kind of along the lines of the always be learning stuff that I talked about in an earlier video. Be learning, but still do things in a way that works best for you. So yeah, as you can see here, we definitely have a ton of welding to do on this piece. It was quite a process to build this entire core support, and it served all the purposes that we need it to. You know, hold the fenders together, fit around the radiator, but not be connected to the radiator. Because the way we've designed the front end of this car is so that the fenders, hood, grill, front bumper, all of that can be removed and the car still drive around. It's kind of something we've done on a few cars, and seems like it's something that's nice when you're working on the car, or, you know, you can completely take the car apart pretty easily, unplug the wiring harness off the firewall and take the entire nose of the car off so that you can have better access to other things, or just makes it easier to work on the engine. Or say we change the engine in this car years down the road, well, it'd be nice to be able to take the front end off. Now we're wrapping up pretty much all the welding on here, putting it in for another test fit before we take it out for the final time for powder coat. And I believe about the only thing left to do on the core support at this point is to weld the brackets to catch on the bottom of the filters. So another thing the core support is doing is, you guys saw the tray we kind of made in the front of it. So it also serves the purpose of holding the front edge of the hood down. We are going to be changing the hood at some point to a flat hood, which may mean we have to move the fuel pressure regulator. Honestly, that's the thing that sticks up the highest. You guys probably saw in the quarter mile pass video that the back edge of the hood, it's kind of floppy. So we could either spend some time fiberglassing the back of the hood to add some more strength into it, or just let it ride for a while and we'll not worry about it because we're going to change the hood. So now in this part of the video, Travis and I are kind of going over what we need to do to make the expansion tank mount to the chassis so that it can stay a part of the car. That's one thing we didn't do originally. We just had the expansion tank mounted to the inner fender. And now we're working through a spot to build some mounts off of it, which I'll have to show you after we get the car completely back together, because I forgot to in this video. But that's going to wrap up this time lapse. Let's get back to the live footage. All right, well, fast forward a little bit, and the car is missing a few things. All the frame is off at powder coat. A lot of the suspension pieces are off at powder coat. Lower control arms, actually no, lower control arms are right there. And we've got a little tiny contact point right here on the lower control arm. So before we send it off for powder coat, we're going to actually reshape that a little bit and put a piece of plate on it, just to give us a little bit of extra clearance. Because if you remember, we modified the steering attachment points to get more turning radius on this car. With the strut front end, had a pretty wide turning radius. And even now, it's not the best, but it's pretty good for a race car. At least pretty good for a drag race car. So you can see how the front core support is turned out. We've got a piece of channel that's going to bolt in here once this gets powder coated, and filter slides in. Piece of C channel goes in. It's kind of actually a little Z here that kind of comes out and captures the filter, catches right in this little piece right here to hold the filter in. Only these two bolts hold it in. So when we get to the track, we'll just pop the strip out that covers here, take these two screws out, take the piece out, leave the tubes hooked up, and then we'll actually have kind of like a ram air deal for the turbos. And this is actually Soccer Mom's converter that we just got back, but the converter is out at PTC for this car. So we're gonna stick that back in when it comes back in. I think it's supposed to be back possibly by Friday. So once we get the converter back, stick it back in there. And while the engine's out, we're gonna retorque the cylinder heads because it's had a couple of good heat cycles on it. Quite a few good heat cycles actually. And then she'll be ready to go back in the car for a long, long time. Pretty exciting that seems like we fixed our belt problems at the last track event. The thing was really aggravating me, jumping one belt groove. I was a little worried about it when we decided to use this bracket setup, but now that we've got the shimming right and everything, it seems to be doing pretty well. I did change this pulley to a larger one with side grooves on it so that it keeps the belt centered there, and then we put a larger pulley on here to slow the alternator down a little bit, because you don't ever want to overspeed your alternator. That's a good way to break them inside of them. Overspeed things, and too much RPM is a bad thing for an alternator. But we changed this pulley too to a metal one instead of the plastic one that came with the kit. And before too much longer, Sean's gonna have this thing and he can work on getting the AC hooked up. It's not something we really do here at KSR, is AC stuff. It's just, there's rules with doing AC in Florida, and we don't have the licenses, so we don't do AC aside from just bolting the compressor on. But not gonna hook any of that up. I said we'll pop the valve covers off, retorque the cylinder heads. I think I may even get his valve covers powder coated while we've got them off. That would make them look kind of cool. So lots of exciting stuff happening with Sean's Chevy 2. We've got one track event, possibly middle of December. That one's going to be a stretch. Depends on powder coat and the time in the schedule to put it back together. But in January, there's several events we're going to start taking the car to. Get Sean comfortable in this thing and get him going real fast. Yeah, that'll be exciting, both for us and for him. I know he's been excited to get this thing going. We have been too. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Please subscribe if you're not already. See you next time.